Hi, my name's Mark Tyrrell of Uncommon Knowledge, and this is the video version of my Devouring Mother When Love Strangles blog, which is online. I'm also going to give you 5 ways to help your client heal from smothering mothering. Now, before I get going, if you're a practitioner of any kind, you might be interested in getting my free therapist's toolkit, which contains my reframing book, New Ways of Seeing, plus 4 other eBooks, as well as over 40 editable worksheets that you can use with your clients, and some relaxing audio sessions specially created to help practitioners navigate the stresses of practice. So the link is in the description and on screen now. So on to this video. Now, many years ago, I had a client come and see me, and I'll call her Katherine. When I say she came to see me, I mean her mother brought her to see me. Katherine was 40 years old, but not in her mother's eyes. It soon became more than clear that Katherine was the centre of her mother's world, always had been. It seemed to me that Katherine couldn't breathe because her mother's control was suffocating her. Perhaps it was control dressed up as love, but it was control nevertheless. Katherine seemed stunted in many ways. I recall dimly the idea of the archetype of the devouring mother. Put simply, devouring parents are those who become so involved in their children's lives and identities that they overlook their children's need for autonomy to grow and develop independently. Devouring mothers in particular often show this through excessive care or overprotection, smothering and possessiveness, a kind of slow killing with kindness, or being so kind that the kindness goes full circle and almost turns into cruelty. Some mothers, hopefully most, nurture you until you can stand on your own 2 feet. They hold your hand gently until you finally grow into independent adulthood, by which time they can let go to some extent. But others continue to squeeze desperately, refusing even to loosen their grip, let alone let go. The devouring mother dynamic might be encapsulated as love entangled with control, where a parent's care slowly consumes a child's independence like a kind of emotional boa constrictor. The mother comes to identify almost solely with her child. So basically, parental and child separation, that central facet of the maturing human, fails to happen. Care becomes a cage and love becomes a leash. This kind of dynamic can result in chronic interdependence, anxiety, and a lack of confidence. Now, the idea of the devouring mother is a psychoanalytical idea based on Jungian archetypes. Like perhaps most, possibly all, overcomplicated theories, the pattern has a central element of recognizable truth to it in everyday life. Most of us have probably witnessed over-nurturing as a form of stifling restriction or unconscious coercion and control, where love is used as a weapon to sort of colonize another person. Its opposite archetype, the good mother, nurtures and releases the child. The flower of childhood is nurtured, watered, given what it needs, but given space to breathe and grow and become an independent entity. Okay, so of course children need love and protection and the wisdom of an adult to help appreciate dangers in life as well as opportunities, but human autonomy is the ultimate end to nurturing parental love, or should be. Now, I'm not suggesting men never overprotect or emotionally suffocate their offspring in the name of love. Of course, that can happen. But I have noticed this kind of pattern to be more common in mothers than fathers. Difficult fathers may present all kinds of other problems, of course, but I'm not talking about that here specifically. So in archetypal terms, the devouring mother is the shadow side of the nurturing mother, the life-giving force that refuses to let go, becoming life-stifling instead of life-sustaining. It's the same energy just turned inward until it smothers rather than supports. Okay, so this pattern is rooted in a kind of enmeshment where personal boundaries blur and the child becomes an extension of the mother's identity rather than having their own identity, and therefore they can lose their identity, becoming molded by the mother's expectations and concerns and priorities. While the mother may say, I only want what's best for you, the underlying drive is often to keep the child dependent, not out of hatred, but out of fear of losing relevance or love or control. And these are generally unconscious drives. So I guess this kind of devouring eats away at the potential of the child or adult to live their fullest life. In essence, care morphs into control and prevents growth. So I asked to speak to Katherine privately without her mother, and her mother said that her daughter doesn't like to speak to people without her being there. Okay, so she replied for her daughter. Katherine, though, said it would be fine to speak to me privately, and her mother finally prized herself from the room like a superglued clam being wrenched from a rock. But we did manage to speak privately, and I never used such an outdated term as devouring mother with Katherine, but it was clear that she herself felt that her mother had all the main manifestations of the pattern of over-control. Katherine was quick to add that she was sure her mother always had the best of intentions for Katherine. As I listened to her, I saw many of the typical patterns as to how this kind of maternal over-control can form. So why the devouring mother pattern forms in the first place? Now, the devouring mother pattern isn't always malicious by any means, and often it grows out of the mother's own unresolved issues. So why might a mother have become a devouring mother in the first place? Well, this parenting pattern may have developed through, firstly, unmet emotional needs in the mother's own childhood. Perhaps she, the mother, lacked nurturing or stability or a sense of status and relevance, and unconsciously uses her child to fill those unmet needs within herself. It may also have been that a previous child was lost, so that the surviving child is seen as that much more precious and fragile. There may have been a loss of identity outside of motherhood for the devouring mother as well. Some women tie their entire sense of self-worth to their role as needed caregiver. When the child grows up, independence feels like abandonment, and the alternative to being a full-time mother may seem like a kind of extinction of the self. Then again, there may be a kind of fear of the outside world. The mother might project her own anxieties onto the child, believing she's protecting her child when she's really stunting their development, their growth. She may be over-attuned to imagined as well as real threats from the outside world. She may be teaching the child to be unduly risk-averse. There might be generational patterns. If her own parents were controlling or enmeshed with the mother when the mother was a child, she may repeat the same dynamic, believing it's normal That's how these things just work. Then again, the mother might have narcissistic traits in which solipsistically everything is the self, everything is her, or more specifically herself. Her child's successes are really her successes. Her child's problems are her problems. There's no real separation in her mind between her and her offspring. When she's protecting her child, she's really protecting herself. Or the mother may have some autistic traits which make it hard for her to truly separate her own identity from that of her offspring, or intuit her child may have different personality characteristics to her, or perspectives from herself. This can seem like the narcissistic pattern, and maybe, but through different psychological causes. But whatever the cause, emotional enmeshment, to an extreme extent, always creates problems. With Katherine and her mother, it was almost like their identities had become fused together. And I noticed that when Katherine tried to speak for herself, her mother would immediately interrupt, saying things like, "Oh, you wouldn't like that, would you?" Meaning, of course, that she herself wouldn't like that. So it was clear that in her mother's eyes, there was little differentiation of identity between the two of them, that essentially they were the same person. This emotional fusing together had, it seemed, prevented all kinds of natural developments for Katherine. So she'd never had many friends, or her mother had said, "We don't need friends," or she'd never pursued jobs that were far away because her mum had always told her that she and her needed to be together. Katherine wouldn't like it there. You wouldn't like it in this new job if it was out of town, and so forth. She'd never travelled independently from her mother, never had a partner for more than a few weeks. Escaping the clutches of this dynamic had been too much for Katherine, and she hadn't been able to do that. Okay. But there's a kind of moral trap for the child of a smothering mother, because over-nurturing to the point of mental strangulation can be couched as love and protection. It can be hard to challenge that, and that's what makes it so tricky or pernicious to spot, and even trickier to break. Because it looks like love and protection, questioning it can feel ungrateful. She sacrificed everything for me. Or it could look disloyal. If I pull away, I'm betraying her. Or selfish, I'm thinking about my own needs instead of hers, my mother's. That emotional framing creates a moral trap, a double bind, catch-22. The child feels like a bad person for wanting independence, and the mother feels like a bad mother if she lets her child go. In healthy dynamics, love and protection equip someone to leave and face the world. But in the devouring mother pattern, they unintentionally become tools to keep them close. Now, the mother in this case had brought Katherine to see me because Katherine had a history of depression and she was becoming depressed again. The mother in no way entertained the possibility that she herself may be playing a part in Katherine's unhappiness. But it was plain to see that many of Katherine's basic emotional needs were being blocked by the stifling effects of her mother's demands. Her mother called her every day, multiple times. Her mother was still angry that Katherine had deserted the family home, as the mother had put it, by moving out to an apartment in a very nearby street a year before. So she'd left home at 39. Her mum had to know exactly where Katherine was at all times, what she was eating, and how she was spending her money as well as her time. If Katherine met a new friend, her mother would insist on giving the friendship the okay only if she felt the friend was suitable for Katherine. and Katherine was sort of going along with this. Some of her mum's tactics were downright emotionally crippling. The mother would use all the usual methods of emotional blackmail, with guilt tripping being a prime ingredient. She would cover all of this in a "it's only because I love you, it's for your own good" guise. When I'd interviewed them together, her mum had said peevishly, "I just want what's best for you. But if you think you know better than your own mother," and things like that. I could actually see in real time buttons being pushed in Katherine as she looked distressed and ashamed and guilty when her mother was pushing her buttons in front of me. Privately, Katherine told me her mother's emotional swamping had always been a problem, but she was just so used to it. She said a few years ago, I got a job in another city, and my mum said, "If you move away, you're abandoning me, and you'll be ending us." Ending us. Feeling guilty, Katherine turned down the opportunity to take that job in another town. Years of this emotional enmeshment had left Katherine anxious, unsure of her own decisions, and continually resentful. She told me she didn't know who she really was and had little to no self-confidence. So it became clear to me that along with other strategies to help Katherine begin to lift the depression that she'd been having, this issue of her mother also needed urgent addressing. So here are 5 core steps I took with Katherine to help her break away from her mother's apron strings whilst actually strengthening the mother-daughter relationship as a real relationship. So firstly, we can name the dynamic. Understanding that this is emotional enmeshment, not healthy care, helps break the illusion that it's just love. Katherine had actually known for a long time that her mother's involvement with her was not normal. As I mentioned, I didn't bang on about obscure terms like archetypes and so on, and use scary sounding terms such as devouring mother. We just explored the patterns together from the outside, as it were. Katherine began to feel that it wasn't just not normal, but it was no longer sustainable or inevitable to live as she was living, at the behest and whim of her mother for her own good, as her mother put it. Describing the pattern calmly gives your client permission to see it clearly, and you're not criticizing their parent, you're just pointing out patterns. So next we needed to actually enhance the way Katherine related to her mother. So next we can start with micro boundaries. If going no contact feels impossible, as it often will because, of course, of guilt and love, then our mother-smothered client can start small. We might help our client slowly build up more independence through such methods as beginning to delay answering messages, or keep certain personal details to themselves, or saying, "I can't talk right now," without over-explaining. This just helps create a little breathing space between the mother and your client without the wrench of breaking away entirely. In a sense, they begin to condition the over-controlling parent subtly and gradually to be less constrictive. So I helped Katherine begin to very slowly separate her sense of self from her mother by slowly enlarging her own autonomy. And we can also help our client be really clear about the difference between love and control. Thirdly, we can help separate guilt from love. Love is freely given. Guilt is a control tactic. I suggested to Katherine that when she felt guilt rising, to ask herself, am I actually doing something wrong, or am I just disappointing her expectations? So you doing something wrong and you disappointing someone's expectations can be different things. The morality of good versus bad isn't just predicated on other people's expectations of you. Hypnotically, I helped Katherine begin to control her responses to button-pushing tactics by her mother. She could still feel all the love she had for her mother, but separate that from being manipulated and not tangle up her refusal to be manipulated anymore with questions of love or loyalty. It was also clear that along with Katherine's own psychological constriction, her social world had been miniaturized by her mother's love swaddling. So the fourth strategy is to help build external validation. We can help our smothered adult clients create supportive networks outside the family, or more specifically the mother-child dynamic. Friends, mentors, social groups are all components and indicators of an independent adult life. So basically, we can help them meet their needs away from their mother. Once they can have validation and interaction independently of the child-mother dynamic, then they gain emotional size and strength. Katherine took a job that she wanted to take a couple of hours away from where her mother lived. She joined a sports club and started meeting friends without passing them by her mother first for approval, and her mum didn't like it, but her threats of cutting Katherine off entirely never came to anything, of course. And this links to the final step I want to address on this video. So number 5 is help your client claim their independent decision making. I encouraged Katherine to practice making choices based on her own needs and desires, not simply her mother's. When what her mother thought was best for Katherine conflicted with what she, Katherine, thought was best for herself, she was to follow her own dictates more. So we worked on building this up so it started to feel more natural for Katherine. This didn't mean she never listened to her mother's advice, because sometimes it was really good advice. Her mum was a highly intelligent woman, but certainly with things such as her clothing or her hobbies or weekend plans, Katherine was encouraged to make decisions predicated based on her own thoughts and wishes, rather than putting it through a filter of her mother's. She in no way neglected her mother, but she was no longer ruled by her either. And it was a bit-by-bit process. And it was also true that Katherine's mother needed to meet her own needs adequately away from Katherine as well. And Katherine found that the more autonomy she got for herself, the more her mother began to, after a time, of course, to build more of a life away from the claustrophobic, emotionally locked embrace of the mother-daughter dynamic. She started building her own life a bit away from Katherine. Her mother started seeing other friends and family and pursuing other interests of her own. Katherine still loved her mother, but she was able, in a sense, to love her more. But she finally felt like she had allowed herself to grow up by becoming, in a small way, and for a brief period, mother to her own mother. So I hope you found that useful, and if you did and haven't already, click like and subscribe. It helps the channel out, and I'll see you very soon for another video.